Hello. Okay, this is going to be a JSON saving tutorial. So we're going to save and load data from a file on disk so that it's persistent between game sessions. So also the reason we use JSON is because it can be formatted in a really easy to read way, and it converts directly into a class thanks to some utility methods that the JSON utility provides to us. So at the moment, to demonstrate this, I'm going to create a little UI interface for editing data of a user, for instance, and then display it over here and be able to save and load from disk. So let me go ahead and start creating that. Great. Okay, so now that our UI is set up appropriately, let's go over to, oops, scripts. Okay, so we're going to input information over here, press the save button, it'll collect all that information and pop it into our save class, and then over here when we load, we're going to take whatever's loaded onto disk and pop it out here into the UI. So let's go and create a script here, and let's just call this okay, so this can be a generic saving class that can save all related data. So save load personal data, sure. Okay, so brand new script open here. Let's construct our data, what we actually want to save, right? So we're going to make this a public class, and this class is just going to be called, let's say, personal data. Okay, and this is what's going to hold our information, what our actual information is. If you do have a class already that encapsulates all that data, so your name, your age, your pizza, whatever, then you can actually just put in an instance of it right here. Okay, so yeah, call this my personal data class. This is going to have a public string for name. We're going to have a public string for occupation, for age as well, except that age is going to be an int. And then we need one for our favorite pizza, and maybe let's make pizza just for the fun of it. Let's make it an enum. Let's go pizza, and let's put in here pineapple. So controversial. Mushroom, cheese, salami. Yeah, whatever. There, we got our pizza. So let's make that a pizza field over there. Yes, we should actually move this into our own script called personal data. And since pizza is part of that, let's just drop that in there. Okay, so we're going to just separate our personal data from our saved data a little bit here. So one of the purposes of doing it this way also is you probably shouldn't have too many classes in one script. It gets confusing in trying to locate where those scripts actually are, or if they exist in the first place. And if you're looking for the class personal data, you're assuming that there's a script called personal data, but it's hidden in some other class, then it's going to be difficult to find. So yeah, better to have one class per script. And also obviously this means that we can add all sorts of extension methods, utility methods as well, that we can change this data using different things. Cool. So in our save class then, we're gonna create, let's see. So we're gonna create an instance of personal data. So public, and we could make this static actually, since it's mostly going to be value type data. So if you think about how you would save and load things, references to objects that exist inside of a scene will get lost. You're not going to have that. So when you're saving out data, you want to be saving out reference value type data only, because that value type data can be fed back into whatever system you've got to load up and use that data efficiently. So you wouldn't save out a whole character, for instance. You would save out the position of the character, the rotation of the character, the scale of the character, basically all the information that is a transform, if you just want to make sure that it's in the right position in the world. States as well, things that happen to those characters, like unlocking quests and all of that, that's still value type data, because you're saying, okay, the quest system works on maybe integers, right? And an integer represents whichever quest, and if that integer is part of your quest list, then you've done that quest. So that is still just a number at the end of the day, which is a value. So when you're saving, you're mostly saving out value type data and not reference type data. So in that way, we can use a public static personal data, and this will be my personal data save. Okay, so this can then be accessed and populated from wherever in my system. Right, one thing we forgot to do was make our class system.serializable, so that we can use this within Unity, see it in the inspector, but most importantly be able to actually serialize this class down into a JSON file. Okay, so we've got our personal data there. We need to create two methods, one for saving the data and one for loading the data. So let's do a public, can we make this static? Yes, we can. Let's make it static so that all we do is access the class. This class actually doesn't even need to exist then as a mono behavior. It doesn't need to be anywhere. We'll just access the class directly. So public static save data, and then, what? A void, obviously. Sorry, that needs to return absolutely nothing, or let's return a bool. Although it's never going to be false really, so let's just do that. Okay, save the data there, and let's just go load the data. So with saving the data, we could either modify this separately or modify this only internally. In other words, saying save data, this personal data. Yeah, let's do it that way. Okay. Let's put in a log to begin with. Saving data and loading data. Right, then we need to save the data to some path, right? So let's create a string called path, and we're going to use the path.combine method, and we'll use a shortcut to the persistent data path. So persistent meaning it persists, it saves to disk. This folder is specific to the platform you're developing on as well. So on mobile, on iOS, and on Android, this will be a specific folder in the user folder. And those users do have access to this folder, but when you delete the application, for instance, it won't delete that data. It'll keep it for the next time you actually want to load up that application again. So using application persistent data path makes it like platform agnostic basically. So it doesn't have to, we don't have to say in C drive, save it under this place, etc. Unity will take care of that for us. So we want to combine the persistent data path with our file name. and in this case we're going to call it personal data save dot JSON. Okay, and you'll notice path is underlined because it doesn't exist in this in any of these namespaces. So you actually need to go over here, click the little light bulb, and say using system.io, and that it gives us access to basically modifying files and loading them up from the hard drive. Right, then we need to convert our data class, which is personal data, into something that can actually be saved into the JSON file. So we're going to, and this will be a string. This is going to be our data, and this is going to equal our JSON utility dot to JSON. And in here we can give it any object. So remember that an object is anything. Everything in C# is an object. Okay, that is like the base form. So when you create an instance of a class, it becomes an object. Like here we've got our personal data instance called personal data there. So we're just going to feed that in, personal data save, and that is going to convert that entire class with its hierarchy here into a human readable structure, which is JSON. So then once we've created this, we actually need to use that string somewhere. We need to pump it back into the JSON file. So we can use that with file.write write all text. And then we're going to give it, first of all, the path that we created, and second of all, the data that we created. So if you hover over that, you can see it gives the path and the contents, and that'll simply write it directly to file there. And then we save out the data. So let's give, in order to test saving out and seeing what the structure of our JSON is, we need to just create a UI file, a UI script. Come on, Udry, there you go. Let's just create a simple UI save load so that our button can just trigger off the load function. Okay, let's get rid of all of that and do a public void save data. And in here, we're going to say save load personal data dot save data, and we need to give it some personal data there. So let's do a personal data so we're going to use this as basically our container to hold on to all the information we change through the UI, and then once it's complete, pass that through to save data. Okay, and we should probably say equals new personal data. So that'll just generate a new instance of this class. Okay. So that's not going to give us much information. It's going to give us all nothings because nothing is defaulted here, right? So let's just give it some defaults. Okay, so we've got some defaults at least, so when we call the save method, it should just save out those defaults then. Okay, so let's just put our UI save load over there, our save button, which is there. Let's just hook up that save data function there. And now let's run it. Press save, saving data, saving, cool. Now, the question is, where did it go? So by default, it'll save it to an app data folder. It'll create roaming first. I think it goes to local low. Let's just see what our project is set up as. Coding demo. Okay, so this company name and product name directly link to whatever the folder is that gets created here. So there's coding demo, and mobile notifications is what we called it here. And they can see here's our little JSON file. And if we load up our JSON file, we get underscore name is test, age is 2, occupation is work, and pizza is 0. Now, if you don't understand why it's 0 there, 0 is because that's the first element in the enum. Remember, these are all integers, essentially, indexes, like so. Okay. Okay, so, shut up, Alexa. Hey, Alexa, shush. Okay, so that is saving. Awesome. Now let's hook up our load. Okay, so we've got that's the UI. Let's work out our load function over here. So the load function is almost exactly the same, other than instead of writing, we're going to be reading, and then we're going to be assigning our data back to this. So when we load the data, we might actually want to return, since we're passing in data here, I think we're definitely going to need to return some data to whoever's calling it. So actually, this becomes invalid. Yay! Efficiency. Cool. So let's move that down over there. Our path is still the same. And then we just got to switch these two around since our data is going to need to come after reading the text. So we're going to say read all text. And we need to assign that to something. So it's going to be string data equals yes, and then we will return our JSON utility dot from JSON. And then this, we need to give it a type as well. So in here, we're going to do personal data. And then in brackets, we want to give it the data over here. Okay, this read all text obviously doesn't need a second parameter there. It just needs the path. Okay, so we have our path. The path is exactly the same. We associate our data. We stream in our data into a string from reading all the text from that file, and this is what you'll get from that whole text file. Then we need to convert this back into a class, and this JSON utility does that for us. We specify the class that we want to convert the data into, and that will then just return that data. Okay. So in our UI save load, let's go ahead and create another one over here for load data. And over here, we're going to go load data. And instead of having a parameter there, we're going to be assigning that variable to the load function. Load data. Yep. And then let's just change that to loading. Cool. To make this easier to see, let's just serialize that field there so that we can see it in our inspector. And then let's hook up our load function. Not that one, that one. UI save load, load data. Okay. And on our UI, we can see exactly what our data is. Okay, so we save the data and we load the data, and it's as expected. It doesn't change because we haven't actually made it change. So if we were, actually we could edit it directly in here. Let's do this. Testing 5 and cheese. Save that. And then if we go look at our file, we have testing 5 not work, and we have an index of 2, which is our cheese. Yeah. Okay. So you can totally see it's working there, but now let's just make this UI work a little bit better for us. Okay, so we need some inputs. The input field, we can use the onValueChanged to just save out whatever the value is, then back into our class. So we go and create a bunch of methods here for public void set name, and it needs to take a string name, and then we're going to go current dot name equals name, and we're going to do this for the other ones as well, and this is going to be age, and occupation, and then for favorite pizza, or did we just make it pizza? It is just pizza. And in this case, age is an int, and this is a pizza, an enum. That's actually not going to work. Those need to all be strings because it comes from an input field. We need to convert it. Let's go int.parse for the string there. So int.parse will convert a string, or attempt to convert it into an integer. And then over here, let's do this one's going to be interesting. It's an enum. We need to do a drop down, but that's going to be a bit overkill, maybe. Let's see, favorite pizza, add in UI drop down. Let's just copy the transform properties. Turn off that input field. Okay, that is a single item there. Let's make that. What were our options for pizza? Pineapple, mushroom, cheese, and salami. Pineapple, mushroom, cheese, and salami. Pineapple, mushroom, cheese, and salami. Okay, that takes care of options. Damn, okay. Pineapple, mushroom, cheese, salami, no sprites. Let's see, I don't know if I actually need those then. Okay, cool. Yeah, drop down works. Great. It just resets the information of one item, which is actually very useful. Okay, so the drop down is going to be fine, and the drop down's output is an int. Yeah, great. So the int is going to be perfect because we can just convert an integer into our pizza enum by simply going pizza. Okay, so it converts an integer into the enum equivalent value. Great, so that sets up that, and then in order to load out all that data into the appropriate fields, we are going to need some references to those objects. So let's do serialized field text, and this is going to be our name text. And you'll notice it's underlined. We need to add in unityengine.ui. And we're going to do our age text, our occupation text, and our pizza text. Great, so then when we load up the data, I suppose we could do it in here. Name text equals our current personal data dot name. Okay, it's got an issue? Oh, of course, dot text. Okay, and then this is going to be age, occupation, pizza. And this is going to be underscore age, occupation, and pizza. Okay, two of them are mismatching types from string and int. So we can just go over here, dot to string, and over here, dot to string. Cool, so that'll load up our data then. Great, so let's just hook up those. Let's drop in our object there, go there, and this is going to be set pizza. There we go. And actually we want to use the dynamic so that when this changes, you'll notice there in 32 needs to match. So because they do match, we can dynamically set it and it'll use whichever one is selected there. Okay, then our input field here for occupation. And let's just do these two at the same time as well. So all three of those drop in UI. And remember this is dynamic. So this is going to be the dynamic age, name, sorry. That one's age already, and occupation. There we go, set occupation, great. Okay, that takes care of the editing part of it. Now the display part of it. We need to assign these 4 text items here. Okay, so the output field. There we go. On there for name, for age, occupation, and favorite pizza. Great. Okay. Let's go to Ted, who is 54. He's a welder, and his favorite pizza is cheese. Save that. Load. Boom. There we go. Saving and loading. Now, if we just had to close that, run it again, and try load again, we get our information back. And thank you, Siri. There we go. The information saves and loads dynamically to a JSON file. And here we go, the JSON formatting, where in inverted commas we have the name and the value there. So one concern obviously is that this can be edited by users, and you definitely don't want users modifying their level to level 80 or whatever in WoW. So the way we can get around that is by doing encryption, which I'm not going to cover in this tutorial, but just know that it is easy enough to go and encrypt files if you want to, converting it to binary, etc. Yep, so that brings me to the end of this tutorial. I will have this example on the coding library as well, so you guys are welcome to go and dig through it and test it out. And the save load is as simple as that. This becomes just a utility class. It's not instantiated in the world. It's not on an object. It's just there to be used. You can save the data, give it some data, and load the data, which will then return the loaded data. Quite simple. And this is just our data container for the information we want to be working with and storing. So this could be replaced with your position, rotation, scaling, etc. if you're wanting to save user progress and position, etc. Cool. That's it for now.